Cool. Welcome to the Code Review UX Sync. Yeah, I think the first one on the agenda was I saw the comment that I guess like some analysis was done and sort of the restructuring. I have not had an opportunity to like actually detailed look into it, but it did sort of sound, and I guess your answer here, like that there's more work. And so I guess I'm just sort of curious, like what are we looking at in terms of like next steps or what are we doing here?
Well, yeah, there's always more work, right? So we're done. It's perfect. Um, the overall sort of sense that I got from the interviews I conducted and the ones that I watched were that it was relatively well received, but there were so many questions that came up that I didn't have answers to, and I don't know how it would work yet. Because the restructure was done with such a tiny little example merge request with like 4 pieces of activity. There are a lot of not edge cases, just things that happen in a merge request that were not in this proposal. So I've got this example merge request pasted. I've expanded every discussion on that merge request. I went through several rounds of review with multiple people. Labels were added, commits were added, changes were discussed. It went through a lot. So that's more like not typical, but it's an extreme example. Extreme example. So I'm going to sort of group what's happening at each stage of it, and then see how we can kind of fit that into the structure, and ideally have different versions of it where like you request a. I'm probably not going to do all of that stuff, but questions like how is this going to work when I switch tabs so much, and weren't easily answerable because people weren't really understanding, in my opinion, the point of the overview tab. They were still viewing it like the current overview tab where this is where you go, this is where you do all your things. The proposal is kind of shifting people to the comments tab to use that as your like home base if you're going to do any kind of discussion. That wasn't really clear in the proposal, so we're going to make a higher fidelity proposal with more actions in it, I guess. And then even the smaller things that we thought, we kind of hypothesized that the filters on the activity view would be kind of an easy win and something that could be broken out into an issue maybe right away. I think the goal was to create 5 issues or something for the OKR. So that would have been easy. We still could do that, but I'm not sure about it yet either. I don't want to, add all these filters only to realize that they don't really work that well and have to, roll them back in any way. So more research is the answer to what's happening. And then I'm sure Ben has way more opinions on how we should proceed with that. External users, internal, how we should go about doing it.
Yeah, basically, I mean, we got a positive enough signal on the lo-fi concept testing to proceed, and it's worth some of our time to make it closer to reality, and then do another round and see if we're actually still on the right track, essentially. Like what we did first is basically like concept testing, right? Really low fidelity. Is this sort of a thing worthwhile? Now we're going to move into like usability testing, which is actually like, how is this working? And let's flesh out all the details. And we should move to external users. We can do both if we want. And we'll probably do, I don't know, at least as many as we did. And about you and I can talk about it, about what scenarios specifically we want to craft as you get closer with the prototype.
Yeah, that sounds good. And even though, not even though, it was a positive enough, like Ben said, it was positive enough that we should continue. If everyone had been like, what is this? I don't understand what this is, we would have had to step way back, and that would have been terrible. So this is a good thing. You're frowning a lot, Kai.
No, I'm trying to think through like I don't know. I'm not, yeah, sorry. I don't mean to frown. Like that wasn't my intent to like, I'm trying to understand how all this like, one fits together in terms of like, okay, I was looking at like our OKR, I was pulling it up and trying to figure out like, what did we say we would do? Which like I'm not necessarily concerned if we don't do that. And then I was trying to think like logistically about putting together the mock-ups and sort of what that entails. And I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think I'd say this is consistent with what I had been hearing, is that like generally well received, but we need a higher fidelity test. So like, that's good. That makes sense. I'm also sort of curious to know, like, I think this is always my question, like, how do we get to like, I always worry about these tests that like we never get to like a level of confidence that makes us feel great about anything, because it's so hard to get like real sample sizes, and it's sort of fake work streams, and they're very staged. Or you get people who like aren't familiar at all with GitLab, and like then it's like even weirder. Yeah, so I think I'm just like, I'm curious to see how we like approach the higher fidelity test and like get some stuff that gives us confidence in things. I'm also sort of curious about timing. It feels like we obviously won't get in. I think your reasoning for not being in a position where we can create issues makes sense. So I think I'm fine with that. I'm just curious, like, what do we think, like, given how much time it took to get through lo-fi and the testing, I'm wondering like, how much time do we expect like higher fidelity and then testing to take on that?
When you say the amount of time it took to do the lo-fi and testing, do you mean like everything up to that lo-fi mockup and all the workshops and everything?
That's a good question. No, I think
Because
I
the
mean like,
prototype and the testing only happened in one milestone, I'm pretty sure.
okay. Do you
I can't
expect like
remember,
a
but
similar time period for like that, or like would you expect longer to like build out a more detailed? Also not holding you to it. Don't feel like super pressured about it. I'm just curious.
I don't know. I've got them, like the merge request all expanded and screenshotted in my Figma file, and I was just going to start kind of shifting it over into the prototype. Once I get to a certain stage, though, like it might be that I don't need to keep going. Like once I've done like 2 reviews and subsequent commits and everything like that, I probably don't need to keep going. So I don't know yet is my answer. It's not going to take over a milestone to finish the prototype, but then I'll probably need to talk to Ben a little bit about the scenarios and what interactions we need in that prototype to make it worthwhile. And then I agree about the not knowing GitLab. Users who don't know GitLab probably aren't worth talking to at all at this point. So maybe we could just do some more internal talks and then move to external with the same prototypes, just so that we can maybe get quicker feedback. I don't know. I don't want to always stick to internal, but it's so much quicker.
Yeah, I think one of the other like pieces to keep in mind might be, and I don't, Ben, maybe you have thoughts, like what is your, like if I look at a calendar, like a month from now we hit US Thanksgiving, and then sort of 2 weeks after that we hit everybody leaves and doesn't come back until January holidays. And so knowing that that's like internal GitLab culture, right, to be off, like I think people will probably have significant time off coming up. I imagine that also impacts sort of like our ability to find people to test with and do things with over that period of time. Maybe like, is that, I guess I'm wondering, like, do we think we're sort of like into January now before we get like test run on this? Is that like a reasonable thought? If we are 3 weeks to a month to like get a prototype in a spot that we feel good about, that puts us near Thanksgiving. are we now like not testing until January?
I mean, I appreciate the foresight. I don't know for sure, but the nice thing about these like usability testing in general is you don't need a high number of participants to uncover most of the issues. So depending on how we break it out, usually like 3 to 5 participants for whatever flow you want to do. And you can have them, each participant do multiple, interactions if you structure it that way. And I think we can get that pretty easily, regardless of the time of year. And I'm not personally taking more than your average GitLabber. So I'll be around.
Yeah, it wasn't difficult at all to find internal participants. Everyone, I mean, we went within like 2 days for a couple of them, and then everyone I asked said yes. And we have that internal developers who expressed interest in participating in these. I have that list of people, so they're theoretically always going to be available to talk to, and it only takes 45 minutes of their time.
Also, I can start the recruiting process like earlier than normal, and just make sure that we have those folks. Like, I think it's gotten easier over time to get people. Usually once we start putting the screener out there, it'll be pretty quick.
Cool. Yeah, no, I appreciate the update. I will also try and go find all the places where insight things were mentioned and get through those today as well. Apologize for not being as up to speed there. Yeah, appreciate it. Amy, I think you've got the next one if we're good on the first.
No action required, just courtesy. I'm working on a sprawling merge request for source code that will change a subsection in the settings repository UI page. And it's rare that work from one group really crosses over to the work of another. But just FYI, I pushed them to do this rather than make yet another expandable section on the page, one about default branches and one about default branch templates. So I'm not UX, I'm just kind of faking it some mornings. And I've wondered more than once, have we looked at any of this stuff? And does everyone else sob when we do it too? Okay, cool. It's on somebody's radar. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, Mike Nichols did a huge effort on this a while back for like specifically source code settings. I suspect this is like the culmination of part of that work. He went very, very detailed into that. Essentially, we have a lot of settings. It's really, really hard to organize them in a way that makes sense to everybody. But yeah, yes, that pain point is known. I guess that's all I can say.
Fair. I get a little nervous when I'm advocating for UX things. Admittedly, Michael Lee has been participating, so it's not like I am being left on my own to chew on the furniture. But it seems a good courtesy to mention it to you all. That's all.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think my only concern is that box doesn't work great when you change the branch name. Guess what happens actually. I'm sort of
Wait,
curious,
what?
like slashes and other things. Like there's been some bugs with like that box in general for creating a merge request. So I'm wondering like if they template in things that are not. I'm wondering what sort of like new issues this will create in terms of like people templating in branches that like with path names that just for some reason fail to actually create the branch and therefore can't create the merge request.
Do we have a list of some of the stuff they shouldn't do? She said ominously.
We fixed some of them, but like that one that's in the example of like feature slash, I'm pretty sure that does not work correctly. And some of it has to do with like what you target. I'll have to look.
Yeah, and my next question would be, who should I mention this to? I'm willing to be an adult and say, hey.
Do you remember, Annabelle, if we fixed all of? I know.
Sorry.
I don't even remember the specific bugs. I do remember seeing that. I think it kind of conflates with the whole auto create merge request issue in my mind. So I'd have to look at that.
Okay, I'll reach out to Andre since he's front end for both groups. He can be an adult, right?
It actually looks like it all stems potentially from one issue. That's good. Which is not in naming. It's if you try to create a branch from the non-default branch is where it fails. So like this should be fine. Jay would know. I don't think Jay is source codes software engineer and test. I think he's only ours. But it might be worth pinging Jay on that, MR.
Okay.
I know Anastasia's on it, but Jay will have context on the other side of it.
Okay, I can do that. Thank you. And that's why I brought it here. Cool. That's all I have.
Oh, appreciate it. Cool. Well, it was good to see everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks for hanging out. Bye.